Hello and welcome to the lesson for Romeo and Juliet, Act 1, Scene 3. Obviously you're not at school at the moment, so I'll do this via video and I'll go through quite a lot in a lot of detail. So by the end of it, you will analyse Act 1, Scene 3, you'll identify poetic devices, explain their effect on the reader, the character, plot, tone, and you'll draw upon real-world connections. You'll also summarise the scene in your own words, and finally you'll compare three characters. So in Act 1, Scene 1, there are three characters. There's the nurse. She's a wet nurse. She's Juliet's companion. She's from a lower socio-economic class, and she took care of Juliet. She also acts as a foil to Lady Capulet. That means she juxtaposes her, or she is the opposite of her. She sees love and relationships as a chore sometimes. On the other side, we have Lady Capulet. She's upper class, Juliet's mum. She sees marriage as social and has financial purposes. And she's a foil to the nurse again. She juxtaposes her. She's the opposite of her. And then in the middle, we've got Juliet. She's the titular character. You know, her name is in the title, Romeo and Juliet. She's objectified by men. She is romantic and she's in the middle. So before we begin, a little bit of context. A wet nurse. So a nurse, similar to a nanny, a person who takes care of the children, but a wet nurse is slightly different. What they would do is they would actually breastfeed the child. So it's not their kid. You know, the wet nurse for Juliet, she's not her mum, but she would have still breastfed Juliet instead of Lady Capulet doing it herself. So we can infer from this that she has or has had children herself in order to breastfeed. So she's obviously quite close to Juliet because of that. And then a summary of the scene, so what's going to happen in it. It's at the Capulet household before the feast. Lady Capulet calls the nurse. Juliet enters. She asks the nurse to leave, but she changes her mind and asks for her to stay and help. The nurse begins telling dirty stories and jokes. Then Lady Capulet tries to stop her. Juliet's embarrassed. Juliet asks her to stop as well. Lady Capulet asks Juliet what she thinks about getting married, and Juliet says she hasn't given it much thought. Lady Capulet tells her that she gave birth to Juliet. She was almost Juliet's age, and she tells her that Paris has an interest in marrying her. Juliet dutifully says she will look at Paris to see if she could love him. So that's what happens in the scene. Just to help you out a little bit. So let's start Act 1, Scene 3. It starts in the Capulet house. And we begin with Lady Capulet saying, Nurse, where's my daughter? Call her forth to me. So, where's Juliet? Get her to come here. This suggests that the nurse probably has a closer relationship with Juliet from the first line. The nurse knows where Juliet is. Lady Capulet does not. It says, now, by my maidenhead, a 12-year-old, I bade her come. What lamb, what ladybird, God forbid, where's this girl, what Juliet? So it says, now, by my virginity at 12 years old. So I swear on my virginity at 12 years old. I told her to come. What little girl, what little Juliet, where is this girl? So what she's saying is, I swear on my virginity at 12. Again, we can possibly infer maybe she wasn't at 13. Again, showing what life for women was like in Elizabethan England. They were very, very young. She's also, from the first line, we see both of these two women. Lady Capulet is quite cold, quite formal, doesn't have a really good relationship with her daughter. The nurse, on the other hand, does know where she is. She speaks what lamb, what ladybird, this nice language, and she says, now by my maidenhead, I swear on my virginity. So we also see she's quite rude, forthcoming, she's quite sexual. She says what's on her mind. She's not very formal or polite. Some might say she's just as sort of funny as Gregory and Samson and even the servant in Act 1, Scene 2. She's there to lighten the mood a little bit. And Juliet says, Madam, I am here. What is your will? So then we see Juliet, she's very formal to her mum, Madam. What is your will? What do you want? So she's very, very formal, showing the relationship between Juliet and Lady Capulet isn't probably great. They're not that close to one another. Juliet's much closer to the nurse, at least at the beginning of the play. It says, "This is the matter. Nurse, give leave a while. We must talk in secret." Nurse, come back again. So she says, "Nurse, this is what I want to talk about. Nurse, go away for a moment. We've got to talk in secret." "Wait, no, hang on a minute. Come back again. I have remembered me. Thou's hear our counsel. Thou knowest my daughters of a pretty age." So you know everything about it. You can hear our conversation. You're allowed to hear our conversation. You've known our daughter. You hear all our secrets because you've known our daughter since she was a really, really young girl. And you know as good as us. So again, the Lady Capulet hasn't got a great relationship with her. The nurse has, so she's allowed to stay. "Indeed, Faith," she says, "Faith, I can tell her age unto an hour. She's not 14. So again, like, I can tell her age unto an hour. I know her really well. She's not 14. I'll lay 14 of my teeth, and yet to my teen." This is a joke here. She says, I bet 14 of my teeth. I only have 4. So I'll bet that she said by 14 in my teeth, but to my teen, less the teen, I only have 4 teeth. So she's made a bit of a joke here. So again, we see her as quite a funny character. "Be it spoken, I have but 4. She's not 14. How long is it now until Lammas tide?" This is August the 1st. "A fortnight and odd days, 2 weeks and a few days." Right, so she's still 13. So again, Lady Capulet doesn't know how old she is. The nurse knows exactly how old she is. So it shows you the character dynamic here. And the nurse goes on and tells a little story here. "Even or odd, of all days in a year, come Lammas Eve at night, shall she be 14. I just want to pick up here as well. We see a lot of this where they swap words around, and that's actually to make it iambic, so the stress would come in the right place. So coming on August the 1st at night, she will be 14 then. She's still only 13. "Susan and she, God rest all Christian souls, were of an age. Well, Susan is with God. She was too good for me." So we can infer, the audience can infer from this that Susan is likely her own daughter who died. So it says, "She was too good for me. Susan is with God." So her own daughter has died. But as I said, on Lammas Eve at night shall she be 14. That shall she marry. I remember it well. Now, marry doesn't mean to be married or to get married. It's just exclamations. It's like, "Oh no, I remember it well." "Oh dear, I remember it well." So she's recounting these stories now. "'Tis since the earthquake, now 11 years. So there was an earthquake 11 years ago. "And she was weaned." So to be weaned means when you're a baby and you're breastfeeding, to stop the breastfeeding, to start taking away, to give proper milk or solid food or cream. I'm not a parent, so I don't know much about it, but that's what weaned means, to slowly stop breastfeeding. So since the earthquake 11 years ago, she slowly stopped breastfeeding. "I never shall forget it, of all the days of the year upon that day. For I had then lain wormwood to my dug. I put a bitter extract on my breast." So she's telling this dirty story now. So she's like showing how close she is with Juliet. "My own daughter Susan, she's dead. I remember there was an earthquake in Verona 11 years ago. I was breastfeeding, and I was slowly stopping the breastfeeding. I won't forget it. I put wormwood to my dug. I put this bitter herb on my dug," meaning breast, to stop her. Basically, if it bitter, the baby's not going to want to breastfeed anymore. So sitting in the sun under the dove house, "My lord and you were then at Mantua. Nay, I do bear a brain, but as I said, so your lord and you were at Mantua." Mantua actually is where Romeo gets banished towards the end of the story. "Nay, I do bear a brain. I've got a really good memory. But as I said, when it did taste the wormwood on the nipple, when baby Juliet tasted the wormwood of my dug, my breast, and felt it bitter, pretty full, pretty dear. It's nice, it's playful. So to see it tetchy, irritable, and fall out with the dug, to refuse the dug. So basically, again, she's talking this really kind of sexual, like, rude, too personal story about her breastfeeding Juliet to her own mother, no less. Shake, quoth the dove house. So the dove, Shake said, quoted the dove house, "'Twas no need, I trow, I believe, to bid me trudge, to tell me to move." So the ground shaking told me to move. And since that time it is 11 years. For then she could stand alone. Nay, by the Holy Cross. So there's a lot of religious imagery. We see quite a lot of it in the story. Shows a lot about Elizabethan England. Again, it was a very religious time. Prior to Elizabethan England, it was extremely religious. You had the Puritans who actually banned theatre in London, and then after the Elizabethan time, she allowed them. She was a little bit less religious, still really religious, but less religious, and she allowed the theatres back in. So she could have run and waddled all about. She could basically run around. For even the day before, she broke her brow. She bumped her forehead. She broke her where her eyebrows are. She bumped her forehead. And then my husband, God be with his soul. So this is kind of sad now. We see, through the nurse, we get a real clear picture of people. We are. She's very personal. So we know her own daughter died, makes us empathise with her. We know her husband died now, makes us empathise with her again. But we also are getting this story about her breastfeeding Juliet, weaning Juliet, and when she broke her brow. So we're starting to see Juliet as her childhood, and it rounds her as a character. And this is really sad because we actually know how she dies. It says, "Then my husband, God be with his soul, he was a merry man, took up the child. Yea, quoth he, dost thou fall upon thy face?" So, "Yeah," said he, "did you fall upon your face? Thou wilt fall backward when thou hast more wit. Wilt thou not, Jewel?" So you will fall backwards, you'll lie on your back when you have more wit, when you're more cunning, more intelligent, when you're older, basically. "Won't you, Juliet? Wilt thou not, Jewel?" I don't really want to go into too much detail here, but it is important. So you will fall backward when thou hast more wit. This is basically talking about sex. As a woman, it shows that Juliet is really objectified as a woman. She's from the upper classes. She's a noble's daughter. She's from the higher socioeconomic class. But even then, we know without a husband, she's nothing. So, about a little bit more context of when the play was written. This is Elizabethan England, not Verona. It's Elizabethan England. So most women didn't have any schooling. Only the rich could go to school. Some had tutors, others went to grammar school, and even then they wouldn't be taught science or maths or anything like that. They'd be taught sewing, cooking, maybe a couple of other things, but science and debating, they would be left to the men. So schooling would only be for the rich, and even then it would just be to prepare them for womanhood and to be ladylike and to get a husband and have babies. It was unheard of for women not to really be married in Elizabethan England. I mean, I know the average age was 27, 28, but they'd still need to get married, and if they didn't, there weren't a lot of options for them, especially if they didn't have a father. If they had a dad, they could live with them and live off of them for a while. But if not, job opportunities were basically a nun or another job, which I'm not going to go into detail about for obvious reasons. So yeah, that's what he's saying there. He's saying, like, did you fall upon your face? Again, she's banged her head, she's broke her brow, she's banged her forehead and fallen back. He says, yeah, quoth he, dost thou fall upon thy face? Thou wilt fall backward when thou hast more wit. Wilt thou not, Jewel? And by my holy dame, by the Virgin Mary, again, lots of religious imagery, The pretty wretch left crying and said, I. So the pretty dear stopped crying and said, yes. Said, I. Said, yes. To see now how a jest shall come about, to see now how this joke that my husband made shall come true. So again, as she's growing older, the women are talking about her like she's an object, like, you know, they're talking about her being married and having babies, like she's an object. She doesn't mean anything. She's just a vessel for men, and that's it. Never should forget it. Will that not? Oh, sorry. I warrant, I swear, if I should live 1,000 years, I never should forget it. Wilt thou not, Jewel, quoth he, and pretty full it stinted, and said, I am the pretty girl, stopped and said, yes. I'll stop here as well, because I just want to remember, if I go back a bit, it's, get Juliet, I want to tell you a secret. How old is she? How long is it to the date? And then the nurse goes on for ages about this really rude personal story about her breastfeeding Juliet, and then the dirty joke her husband made. So Lady Capulet finally says, enough of this, pray thee. Enough of this, pray thee. Hold thy peace. So enough of this. I ask you to be quiet. I've had enough now. So again, the opposite, the foil of the nurse is Lady Capulet. And the nurse says, yes, madam, I cannot choose but laugh. I can't help but laugh. To think it should leave crying and say I, and yet I warrant it had upon its brow a bump as big as a young cockerel's stone. Again, she's really rude. A cockerel's stone, there's what it means. Really, really rude. A perilous knock, and it cried bitterly. It referring to Juliet. So again, loads of objectification here. Yeah, quoth my husband, fallest upon thy face, thou wilt fall backward when thou hast comest to age, wilt thou not, Jewel? It stinted and say I, and she's laughing, and she's telling this dirty story, and she's really, really funny, and she provides us comic relief for Elizabethan audiences. Lady Capulet's like, stop, I don't want to hear all this. And she keeps telling the same story, making it dirtier, bringing up a cockerel's stone. And eventually Juliet comes in and she says, and stint thou too, I pray thee, nurse, I say I. So she's like, all right, I ask you as well, I've had enough. Peace, I have done. God mark thee to his grace, bless you. Thou wast the prettiest babe that I ever nursed. So again, she did breastfeed her. And I might live to see thee married once. I have my wish. So, you know, if I see you married, my wish will come true. You're the prettiest babe, you're the prettiest baby that I ever nursed, that I ever breastfed. Bless you. So the nurse is really loving and caring to Juliet as opposed to her mum. So marry, that marry is the very theme. So marry, this is the exclamation, not to marry. So, oh dear, my gosh, marry. That marry is the very theme I came to talk of. Tell me, daughter Juliet, how stands your disposition to be married? How do you feel about getting married? It is an honour that I dream not of. You know, remember, Juliet's 13 years old, so it's an honour. All right, Mum, calm down. Yeah, okay. It's a good thing to be married, but I'm not thinking about it yet. Then I says, an honour were not I thine only nurse, I would say thou had sucked wisdom from thy teeth. So, if I was not your only nurse, if I wasn't the only one, I'd say that you had sucked wisdom from a breast. But can't be me, because I'm an idiot. Basically, that's what she's saying. So this is a self-deprecating joke. The nurse is laughing at herself. She's basically saying, if you had breastfed from someone else, I'd argued that you got the wisdom from sucking at their breast, but it can't be me because I'm an idiot. That's what she's saying there. Well, think of marriage now, younger than you, here in Verona, ladies of esteem. So basically, these are made already mothers. Well, think of marriage now, younger than you, here in Verona, ladies of esteem are made already mothers. So basically, in Verona, there's already a bunch of high-class, rich, posh women having babies, getting married. By my count, I was your mother much upon these years, that you are now a maid. Thus then in brief. So when I was your age, I was a mum. About your age, I was a mum. So again, this really shows what it's like to be a woman in Elizabethan England. So the valiant Paris seeks you for his love. So we already know that Romeo is going to end up with her. So it's kind of this competition now between Paris and Romeo. It's developing the plot already. The nurse says, a man, young lady. Lady, such a man as all around the world. Why, he's a man of wax. He's perfect like a wax model. Verona's summer hath not such a flower. Nay, he's a flower in faith, a very flower. So again, there's a bunch of flower imagery, man of wax, a bunch of these metaphors here. What say you? Can you love the gentleman? This night you shall behold him at our feast. Read over the volume of young Paris's face and find the light writ there in beauty's pen. Let's have a little look here, because I want to see if you can guess the imagery and the metaphor here. So, what say you? Can you love the gentleman? Can you love someone like Paris? This night you shall behold him at our feast. Read the volume of young Paris's face and find delight writ there with beauty's pen. Examine every married lineament and see how one another lends consent. So basically look over every part of his face and see how one another lends consent. Each tells a story. And what obscured in this fair volume lies, what you can't see, what is unclear in this book, find written in the margin of his eyes. This precious book of love, this unbound lover, to beautify him only lacks a cover. So what we've got here, if you haven't guessed already, is a book metaphor. Paris is a book. Also, we can have a little look at some of the rhyme scheme here. We've got lies and eyes, lover and cover. Again, because Lady Capulet is a high status, richer character. But yeah, unbound, this lover. Uncovered, unmarried, but unbound, like a book is bound. You put the cover on it, and it only lacks a cover, so he only needs a wife, a girlfriend. The margin, you get margin of a book. Volume and volume are both words that we use for books. Read, I think that's it. There you go, content, I guess. So there's a bunch of there's a really big book metaphor there. The fish lives in the sea. Hang on a minute, I need to look. So the fish lives in the sea, and 'tis much pride, for fair without the fair within to hide. So again, like, think about the mum here. The mum is really superficial. She says here as well, that book in many's eyes doth share the glory, that in gold class locks in the golden story. So shall you share all that he doth possess, by having him making yourself no less. So the mum is superficial and shallow here. She's obsessed with all that he have that you could possess. All that he doth possess, you could have that. In gold class, like golden story. So there's like gold imagery there, and glory. So that's what she wants Juliet to marry him for money and power. So Paris is a book, basically. And then, no less, nay bigger, women grow by men, women get pregnant by men. Speak briefly. Can you like of Paris's love? So what do you think about all this? This handsome fella, man of wax, flower, a golden book that's going to provide you with power and money and all the good stuff, babies. What do you reckon? Can you love him? Juliet says, I'll look to like if looking, liking move. So, if looks will make me like him, but no more deep will I endart mine eye. But no, I won't look any deeper than your consent gives strength to make it fly. So yeah, I'll have a look at him, but no more than you ask me to. Like, I'm not that interested in getting married. I'm 13 years old, Mum. Leave me alone, right? I'll have a look at him. If he's handsome, if he's a nice fella, I'll talk to him. But I'm not gonna marry someone because you make me marry him. I don't want to marry for money and power right now. I'm 13 years old, so I'll do it because you asked me to, but leave it there. And then a servant comes in. Madam, the guests are come, supper served up. You called my young lady, asked for the nurse, cursed in the pantry, and everything in extremity. I must hence to wait. I beseech you to follow straight. So basically, the guests are coming. You called. The nurse is needed in the pantry. There's a bunch of chaos there. I must go right away to wait tables. I beg you to follow immediately. Lady Capulet says, we follow thee. Juliet, the county stays. The count is waiting. Count Paris. Go, girl, seek happy nights to happy days. The nurse is being really dirty again. She says, go have a happy night and you'll have a happy day. So that's the scene. So I've given you enough stuff, hopefully, to make notes about the scene, what's being said, what's happening, the context of the story. There's a bunch of this down the side, so I'm hoping that's enough for you. If not, let me know. Then we're going to go into when you do the work. So you've got two tasks. One of them is going to be analysing a couple of metaphors. There's a few in there. Pick the best ones, because you remember you have to do this level 1, 2, 3. So pick ones you know you can talk about. I mean, the book one, but can you really, how easy is it for you to do a level 3? I don't know. So consider the best metaphors that you can find in the scene. So when you find them, the first thing you do is level 1. Explain what is it saying? What can you see? It's a metaphor. What's it saying? What's the underlying meaning? And use these words to do that. So this is saying that, blah, 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 blah. The underlying message. Then interpret. What does it show about the character, tone, setting, or plot? Use words like these. So how does it develop? If you're going to say, you're going to pick a metaphor about some of the ones about him being a book. I don't know, there's loads to choose from. To beautify him, this precious book of love, this unbound lover, to beautify him only lacks a cover. This is a metaphor about a book. What's it trying to say? He is unmarried. He needs a cover. That's what's going to make him whole, blah, blah, blah. Then what does it show about the character? Right, well, he is someone of high status that everyone in Juliet's life wants him to, wants her to marry for that purpose. But it's a very shallow, superficial kind of love. It's not romantic in any way. And thus, it wouldn't fit in line with the story. So it creates competition between Romeo and Paris, whatever. There's loads you could say about the plot and the character. Level 3 is how does it develop a theme, add to the author's style, relate to character development, or connections to real life events, the author's life history, other stories. We use these words: suggest, demonstrates, indicates, alludes to, or is important because. So I've got an example from Act 1, Scene 2, because I didn't want to take one of yours from this scene. It says so in Act 1, Scene 2, Lord Capulet says to Paris, the earth hath swallowed all my hopes, but she is the hopeful lady of my earth. So this metaphor is trying to say that his previous children died and have been swallowed by the earth when buried. Juliet is the only one who's to survive, and so is the hopeful one to continue his name. That's what it means. That's what it's saying. So they've talked about earth swallowing hopes, but that's what the real meaning is there. That's what it is, the real meaning. The underlying message. We use something else to say what we really mean. We've used earth swallowing hopes to say what he really means. Level 2. This reveals a strong emotional attachment between Lord Capulet and his daughter Juliet, because his pride and clan love want his because of his pride and clan love, he wants his family name to continue through her having children. So this is why I'm saying about the characters. So it shows about the characters and even a little bit about the tone, this pride, this sense of pride. But how does this metaphor and this definition of it or explanation of it develop the characters, the setting, the tone, or the plot? Then level 3. This develops the theme of pride within the play. So I've linked it to a theme. I've said how it develops a theme, or you could do style or character development. And then moreover, in Elizabethan England, the infant mortality rate for babies was 13.5. So I went on the internet and I found that babies died often. So I've used a connection to history for that. So when you're doing your leveled analysis for 2 metaphors or 2 poetic devices, level 1, level 2, level 3. Then finally, when you come to write your paragraphs, use a topic sentence that has the what and the how or the why. So you can use the same, please do use the same colour scheme as me. So highlighted in yellow for your topic sentence, the black just the what, and the pink or purple is the how or the why. Then you need to go into your first piece of evidence. The blue is your words to explain the context. So imagine that someone hasn't seen or read Romeo and Juliet. You need to give enough context of what's happening, who said what, why, when, to whom, before you introduce the quote itself. Now, only give the evidence you need. So if you don't give loads, paraphrase and set context for what you don't in your words, and then the quote that you need, the metaphor itself, you put in red in between it, and don't forget to cite. Then your analysis, level 1, level 2, level 3, comes in green. You might only do, so you need to do at least 2 pieces of evidence, both analysed. You might want to just do level 1, or level 1 and 2, level 1 and 2, and save level 3 to the end if you're going to end up repeating yourself. So don't ever repeat yourself. If you want to do a level 3 analysis, but for each piece of evidence it's the same thing, just say it at the end. You don't need to keep repeating yourself. Okay, but each one has to have a minimum of a level 1 analysis. You need to explain what's actually being said. Then move on to your new subclaim, add it to this, blah, 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 blah. Evidence, analysis. So you need at least 2 pieces of evidence that are both analysed. So you might want to, your questions are basically characterise 2 of the 3 characters minimum. So you might want to talk about how the nurse is really rude, open, very informal, and you might want to, and how she loves Juliet. You might want to write how the Lady Capulet is cold, very formal. You might want to write how Juliet is in the middle and wants to appease people. So there's loads to choose from, but I'd like you to use the colour scheme, please. I think that's it. So if you have any questions, please ask me, and good luck.